Cosmic here, welcome to the channel, and happy Chizuru Day, because yes, we're going to be doing some pulls. We're going to give you the best teams to get started with, and also a full review of her kit and how I'm going to be building her on day one. So we're going to get in, try to get lucky, see how early that we can get her. But if you want to see future guides like this, make sure to like and subscribe, as it does help out the channel a ton. But with that out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff and let's do some pulls. And let's get rid of that annoying message. So we do have a little bit of pity built up, not a ton, but we of course are going to keep things honest, and we are going to quickly skip through this just to try to get that 5-star right away. So Ray is very nice to see. I want to get her to E6, as I'll talk about later in the video. My Mika is already capped, so a little bit of an oopsies there, but hey, it's extra rewards that we can use, or extra rebate that we can use for other stuff. So this will be 20. Got a Tressa. I'm gonna wait for the animation to play. I'll make this quick, but 30. All right. So we got I don't want to jinx it, but we got Yuki at 30 as well. So I'm really hoping that this is just god tier streamer luck. This is why you gotta stream your polls, right? This is why we gotta make sure this makes it into the video. And also because nobody would believe me if I get 3 early 5-stars in a row. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No! Oh, Luke finally came home, I guess. All right, well, we're gonna have to go again. We lost the 50-50, but hey, this is a good character to combine, so we'll keep it going. Which now means that we have to do 120 more pulls for the guaranteed. Oh, Luke, how could you do me like this? Oh, that new message to the Unigram. All right. At least it's a new character. I will be happy about that. All right, 40. We got another Ray. Oh, this is gonna be painful. All right, we lost at 50-50. Ray is gonna get maxed out. We're totally fine. This will be 60. Again, we're just trying to speed pull it here. I think we need one more to max Tressa. Oh, I forgot. If you get the early 50-50, yes, you will get it 70 after that. You are correct. Let's see if we can get anything else. All right, Tressa is maxed. I think Ray is maxed as well. So we're technically still going to get it early because we're going to have pulls left over. So we'll take it. Oh, we saw the screen animation there. This should be the 5-star then, right? Right? All right. Can we get a double, though? Now I'm going to be greedy, right? Okay. Ray is also maxed out, so perfect. We actually got both of them maxed out on this banner. More copies of Tressa. Moonlight in the darkness is brighter. Let's go. All right, well, that wasn't too painful, all things considered. Slide me another one. Can we just like get one more in here? Let the greed really showcase itself. Nope. All right. We will still take it, right? That is what you love to see. Getting the 4 stars, getting into the 5-star that we want, and well, I mean, we got out there pretty easy. I think we had 140, so that was 90 in total, I believe. So we got the early 5-star, which helped us out to make sure we went to 70. And now we have a little bit extra, towards our next one. So, you know what? Hey, not too bad on the pull side. And next, we're going to get into her kit after I have a little bit of time to test her. And then, of course, we will be talking about the teams for the last section. So, of course, before we do the gear review, we got to just show off this gorgeous lobby animation. Absolutely looks wonderful. But now getting into her kit, the part that everyone I know is going to be more interested in, and just for the showcase reasons, yes, here is the current stats of my Chizuru. Yes, I pre-farmed everything. No, it's not perfect memory fragments by any means. And also, I did upgrade her potential significantly, so we are going to be quite a bit invested here. Now, one of the challenges I will say up front, because I also want to mention the partners, is that we don't really have good options in the same way that, you know, Yuki had Lillian, which was really amazing for her kit because it just gave us the free draw. Yes, Douglas was a slightly better choice, if I remember correctly, and how the math worked out in the end. But personally, I always liked the drawing the attack card option. And as we're about to get into her kit and talk about the multi-hits and how she works, it's really important that we actually get our attack cards. So the fact that we don't have something that can give us that attack other than purely relying on draw does feel a little bit like a drawback. So going into her kit itself, and just to get it out of the way, the ego skill, it is going to be just a single target damage nuke based on how many shadows of the moon that we have. Her basic is a multi-attack, and that is relevant and is significant because of Karmic Flames, or more importantly, Cursed Shackles, and how her entire kit comes together. And we were waiting for, and we talked about in our YouTube post, but the biggest thing is that we are waiting to see what mattered for this card, because as the card says here, it does mention an attack card, and only that part was captured in the stream, but a little bit lower, you'll notice that it does state hit count. So her basic is going to give you 2 copies of Will of the Wisp, and that means every character who then has a multi-hit attack is going to have a higher value when you're trying to get the most out of her kit. Now, of course, Chizuru herself does have a lot of multi-hit applications, but you are going to want someone who can spam attacks. And as we're going to showcase as we get into the team build later, there's actually a 4-star that I do very strongly recommend based on the multi-hit application being a pretty good choice here. And so the way that all of this is going to work is that you're building up all of these Will of the Wisps to generate the Shadow of the Moon, which is going to be her other card. And this will stack up. So if you have 1 in hand and you do enough attacks to trigger Will of the Wisp up to 5, it'll remove the 5 stacks, generate another Shadow of the Moon. It goes into your hand, and then it will have bind 2 in this regard, and it'll go up and get a nice damage increase, and then also give you the HP recovery, which is going to be super important. So this does have retain. So very long-winded way to say that the entire package for her is about using Karmic Flames early, getting the debuff on, spamming multi-attacks, and then saving Shadow of Moon until you get the upgraded version, which means you need to do 15 hits, or base, as we're going to talk about some of her cards and go into that in a little bit more detail, there's other ways to kind of cheat the amount of Will-O-Wisp you can get per turn, so it doesn't take as long as that sounds. But that is overall how her kit is going to work. Now, let's get into the actual epiphanies and give my recommendations on how I am going to be building this, at least for day 1. So the most important thing to note here is that this is going to be initiation, so it's going to start in your opening hand, and she does have quite a bit of an expensive start, as we like to say, so she is not going to be a turn 1, oh my god, do insane things character. She is going to require a little bit of setup and making sure that you're going through your deck and getting all the upgrades. So I will say, we'll have to wait a couple days to do more in-depth testing. That does mean she's going to be a little bit more of a ramp-up character, similar to Kayron, it feels like, in a lot of ways. So Void Psionics getting stuck with the build-up package again, but we do have at least some interesting cards that give us a cool payoff and some really sick animations, I will say. Now, Karmic Flames is an interesting one because, yes, you can have a couple good options here to give you another attack card, but I like some of her other attacks better. So for me personally, I am going to be going with this last one ideally as my target for Karmic Flames for the sole reason that it has exhaust, so that it's not going back into my deck. Because while some of these do give you like a Shadow of the Moon, we just did a really quick Chaos run to test this, I don't really want to focus on those as much as the multi-hits that are just going to more quickly ramp up my Will of the Wisps and then generate the Shadow of the Moons that way. So this being 2 AP, I think really holds it back, unfortunately. Like if it was 1, I mean, it'd probably be a no-brainer, right? Because the Shadow of the Moon has like a 1.5 AP worth built into it. So I get why this costs 2, because you have to use multiple cards to get your Will of the Wisp. But still, I am going to go with the exhaust option, just to make sure that I am leaning in on getting my Will-O-Wisp, thinning out my deck, and cycling through those attacks. Moving on to Tsukiyomi, which is going to be one of the ways that you're getting those extra Will of the Wisps. For me, personally, again, you might notice I really love cards that thin out our deck just to make sure that we are going into our big attacks, getting all our stuff, and making sure that we can loop through as quick as possible. And for this one, it actually has two very interesting choices. So on one hand, you have the first Epiphany option here, which is going to give you 3 Will-O-Wisps for each hit of the next attack card, which, as you'll find out with Oni Blade, is just going to generate a ton of her big attacks for you. But the downside here, of course, it's going to be a skill, so you do have to draw into it consistently to get the most value out of it. So for just a pure threshold of what is going to be the main spike in damage that we can see, I really do like this one in particular. The third one would add 2 hits to the next Shadow of the Moon plus. This one's really interesting for how it's going to stack damage with Ray, so it's like my second pick of it. But for something that's going to be like more consistent and is going to be better over like a longer fight and whatnot, her upgrade is actually really interesting. And again, it's going to thin out the deck, which is really nice. But when an attack card of this unit is used, 2 Will of the Wisp. So this means that when you're comboing this with her basic, it is going to give you 4 Will of the Wisps just off that one card. So it's going to stack up quite quickly, and it does build out a case where this is another character like Mei Lin that we're most likely not going to want to remove her basics because they are going to stack up quite nicely for what she wants to do. So for at least Tsukiyomi, that is what I'm going to recommend. Now, Bound at Dusk is the one big card that I was waiting on because this was either going to be awful or it was going to be the one thing that really brought her all together, because there was a couple different translations going around for this card on, you know, can she only decrease her own stuff? Can she decrease cards for other players? And a lot of confusion was going on. So for this one, at least for my take on it, there is nothing better than 1 or 5 here, because the way that she's going to work and the teams that I'm going to recommend in the later part of this video, Bound at Dusk just making those cards cheaper in your hand and effectively giving you 5 AP every single turn is quite good. Now, of course, there are going to be other characters that you have a higher cost, like Magna, where you could use something like the 5th Epiphany here to decrease the cost of the highest card, but you have to really make sure that you have a lot of 2 and 3 cost cards in your deck to get the most value out of that. Otherwise, it is a little bit interesting. Now, the one I will say that I'm like excited for, and not because of current use cases, but like I hope it's good later, is actually the 4th Epiphany, which says activate 2 random lead cards, because this does pair well with, like, Ray has quite a few, but there's not enough yet, I would say, to really get the most value out of this Epiphany. So I hope this is either like a next season upgrade or something that we'll see developed a little bit more in the future, right? The company is very used to going back in either buffing units or bringing stuff into the game where they're going to excel at. So I think this is one that we can expect to see get some play in the future, or, well, at least I would hope so. Now, one of the cards that I am honestly just the most excited for is Oni Hunt, because while it does look like a bit of a downgrade at first, the fact that this can be a ×4 hit when we already want to combo it with Ray, who is going to get the most value in the world off multi-hit applications, you can spike the ever-living heck out of this card damage-wise if you use the right setup. So again, I do want to stress here that for her kit, it is going to feel night and day difference based on if you are picking the right Epiphanies or not. So I totally expect on Reddit, on the comments, a lot of people are going to be saying, this character feels terrible, why did I pull on her, etc., etc. But if they're not using Ray or if they're not picking the right Epiphanies, this character is going to feel a lot weaker. Now, the other part I really like about this is that Oni Hunt is also a great way just to add up some damage into our big payoff. So if you've been paying attention, to go back to this, Oni Hunt is going to guaranteed generate us 1 copy of the Shadow for each turn. So we are going to be able to line up turns where, again, ignoring the cost reduction that we're going to get, we are going to, and spoiler, my copy target is going to be Oni Hunt. Oni Hunt is going to give us multiple copies of Shadow of the Moon in a turn, which is then also getting further boosted because every time that we're using the Oni Hunt, it is giving us the damage increase. And this also is yet another multi-hit application, which is going to get buffed by Ray. It's going to get buffed by her own cards. So this should turn into a very significant damage swing turn after turn that you're using it. Now, again, to get the most out of this, you do have to create 3. So you will need to find some extra attacks in there because we are going to fall a little bit short in the total amount because again, as I mentioned, you're ultimately going to be looking for 15 in total. And when we're using the Tsukiyomi, which is going to give us 2 in this case for the effects. And then if we go back to Oni, we are going to be getting 6 in total every time that we are using this card. So effectively, we are going to get 12 just guaranteed right off the bat. We should be able to fit 3 other hits in there somewhere from our cost reduction, which then means we will always be able to trigger the Shadow of the Moon every single turn, assuming that we are able to loop through our deck, find the right pieces, and then have this be the big payoff attack at the end. And again, we'll get into this in a little bit more detail once I do Ray's breakdown and talk about those. So I'm very excited to see how this all comes together. And then the last thing that I will talk about is just the Manifest Ego. Again, I am someone who just does not pull for dupes in general. I might, if I really like the character, use some of the Ego Manifest materials later on down the road. But at E1, we have plus 20% damage amount to Shadow of the Moon, and it's going to give even more HP recovery. So just a nice quality of life one if you're trying to use her as a solo sustain. When Shadow of the Moon plus is used, create 1 Shadow of the Moon card. Now, this one is going to be pretty significant because, as I just talked about, how there's going to be a scenario where we are short exactly 1 attack effectively with Oni Hunt. This basically says, I got you, bro. You only need to create 2 a turn, which just is going to make her kit feel a lot better. So this isn't as much as like Haru's E2 was, but this is definitely a lot better, in my opinion, than the Yuki E2, because Yuki's was like more of a short-term quality of life adjustment, where this one is like a, no, this is going to be a significant damage improvement that we see turn over turn that's going to be more consistent. So in terms of like who has the best E2, right, I think Haru is still winning by a mile. And while this one is better than Yuki, which ultimately really wasn't that hard if we're being honest, it's still not as game breaking. So it's one of those ones that's like cool to see E2 matter, you know, because we get more free dupes and stuff. But I am someone who, you know, doesn't like the whole dupe system and gotchas in general, but I acknowledge for all the reasons that they should exist. Her E3 is just going to be the standard. The ego skill is going to do more damage. E4, Shadow of the Moon is created, gain 1 Lunar Shard, and Lunar Shard is plus 10% damage amount to Chizuru's attacks card. So this one is actually really nice because, as I was talking about multiple times up to this point, we are just looking for extra ways to get more damage from our multi-hits, and well, this works out perfectly for Oni Blade, so a plus 30% damage, which then translates to a plus 120% damage for that attack card. It's pretty good, right? We have the normal basic upgrade, and then her E6, when Lunar Shard stacks to 3, increase hit count of Shadow of the Moon by 1. So just giving us even more multi-hit attacks. So that is a really quick rundown. Again, just throwing her stats up on the screen one more time. So I really like to see how this is going to flow over the next couple days. Obviously, I am super invested into her and we'll be playing her a lot on stream. So next, we're going to talk about the team recommendations that I would give and why Ray is just the must build for her and why she has to be on your team if you care about this character at all, and some of the other cheeky picks that I would recommend. So let's get into the team building section. And moving on to our team section of this video, I'm just going to break down what my build recommendations are going to be, just highlight some of the example teams that they had given. But for players who are maybe new to the game that are joining us or have just not had a chance to really grind out the chaos, I do want to stress up front that even with her inhibitability and not generating AP, I would still recommend using Mika to farm through chaos because she is going to give you that amount of healing and sustain that you're really going to want. So you can just use anybody else if you have them. Now for save data, yes, of course you could use Veronica, which we would recommend because she has a high number of unique cards, which makes it easier to copy the targets that you want to copy. But On that same note, kind of the elephant in the room is that Veronica's not good, or at least not for Chizuru here, because while she does draw a bunch of cards, we want to be using our attacks. And generally, one of the best things that you can do with her repose, make it a 0 cost, and then generate some AP on top of that as well. It doesn't really flow with her kit as nicely. Now, we do have things like Yuki, who could still be an AoE attack spammer, and based on how you're getting your stacks and what have you, getting the opportunity to generate extra attacks in the turn, especially if you lean into more of her 0 cost side, would really be good. Now, one of the other teams that they did recommend, and I try to not just throw a bunch of 5 stars on here because that felt a little bit unfair, is that yes, I'm using Barrel. So I do actually have a interesting use case for Barrel as a sub DPS for this. But I really wanted Chizuru to be the main focus for this video and not just be a use all the 5 stars, and of course you're going to have a decent team, right? Now, the other thing I want to acknowledge up front is that while, yes, I know a lot of people are excited for Tressa to bring online the full Void team and what have you, I am skipping Tressa just for the sake of this part of the build because, well, her Shadow Dagger reload is still going to be just the best build for her in general, and at that point, it really does overshine what Chizuru can be doing. So yes, there are going to be ways that if you want to go more skill focused and just generate a bunch of extra daggers, you could certainly put her in here and making sure that she is able to lean into the synergy. But it is something that, again, feels like you're just playing a worse build of Tressa for the sake of making a full Void team. So instead, I want to focus on some more interesting builds that could still work and not feel like you're just playing a super nerfed version of the character just to fit them into the team. So yes, again, Veronica is going to take a little bit of a backseat for this team in particular, but the good news is that you can use her in your other team and still be very good. So up first, we are going to be talking about Nia, and I have been hyping up this character a lot lately, and with good reason. So Eternal Hunger has just been an absolutely insane busted card for just giving you infinite draw, giving you infinite AP, it feels like, and helping you go through your entire deck. Now, the one downside here that I do want to acknowledge up front is that, again, because of the inhibitability, that we can't generate the AP off this. We're only getting the draw. However, something to keep in mind is that this is just a good to have on any other characters you want to combine with her. So I would still recommend trying to go for this build of Nia, just in case you have other characters you want to try. And ideally, if you can get the double Eternal Hunger with the Adagio, that's going to be the draw to discard to, is really sick, because if you have 2 of them in your team, you're often able to set up a turn that is going to have both of them in your hand because of retain, discard them so they go back to the top of the deck, and then when you use your next draw ability, you are going to get a free draw 2 and 2 AP as those cards recycle back to your hand. So it's just a great way to shuffle through and making sure that you're drawing as much as you can every single turn while generating some AP as well. Now, for the memory fragments, and my head's blocking this a little bit, but it is the standard just support build stuff, so not too much to write about there. In terms of epiphanies, now we're going to have to wait to see how this actually works out in practice, but G-Cord, I still like the top 3 option because it allows you to find her upgrades quicker, make sure that she's coming online, finding the right attack cards, things of that nature in case you have to get them discarded by a boss mechanic, or there's some other in-game effect that make you lose out on cards, or if you have like Nyx and you're just trying to cycle through, that's fine as well. But G-Cord is just always nice because it allows us to look at extra cards. And then for Soul Rip, I am just holding the retain version. This card in particular works very well with Adagio that allows you to get extra value from the discard, but something to keep in mind is that retain is just always good to keep the cards out of your deck so you can more consistently shuffle back to your various attack cards and making sure that you are keeping the damage flowing. Now, neutral cards are a very interesting discussion point based on the previous video that we've done like this for Yuki, because we've now found a way to be more consistent in our farming in the chaos to get the card that we want to be copied more likely, meaning we don't really have as much room for neutrals anymore that they need to be absolutely game breaking to really get the most use out of. Now, the one that I am still most excited for is going to be attack, because it allows us to find that one key attack that we might want to be using for some type of benefit. But in general, with at least the Nia save data that I was able to put together, I would still recommend just focusing on the heavy copy build, which then if you're playing on tier 14 and you do not get a mutant sample event, it means you get to have a single neutral card in your deck, which, well, I'm just going to use the Forbidden, if I'm being honest, if I see it. Otherwise, you might not want to take a neutral card anyways, because that's one card that you might accidentally copy on the final boss instead of the card that you had planned. Now, when it gets into the gear, this is a pretty generic, support lineup across the board. Tentacles of Chaos is just always nice to give your main attack damage dealer plus 8% attack. Very great buff. Fragment of the Empty Void gives you the extra filtering, or the free mulligan, as we would say in TCG terms, to, discard some cards and then draw extra ones. And then Sphere of Randomness, which is the one that I actually like, because this one is going to be very, very important for Chizuru, and then note that this is going to give you the AP at the start, which then means our opening turn, we can still have the extra AP to go and play out our upgrades before we get stuck with that inhibit cost. So for this in particular, for this team, I would very, very, very strongly recommend Sphere of Randomness as your gear choice, because getting that opening AP is going to matter a ton. And then if for some reason you also have like the save or storage gear on another character where you get to carry over that AP of, let's say you get a very low costed hand, then that just gives you more AP generation to kind of smooth out the following turns. When it comes to weapons, otherwise, flashbang, whatever kind of filler that you want there. It's not like Nia's going to be doing a lot of benefit from her attacking. And then for the armor piece, otherwise, through the source of Laboratory Zero. Now, this, of course, will change with the update, as people can now go freely farm whatever chaos they want for a seasonal save data. Start a battle, draw one, right? We just want to find more of our combo pieces early on to make sure that we are able to have the best turn one possible. So getting the extra discard 3 into the plus draw can really help smooth out those opening turns. Now, Cassius is going to follow a lot of that same logic, but the thing that you'll note here is that I did change him, because how I want to try him is going to be more of a sub DPS, because, well, Devil Dice can do a lot of spamming, and there might be an opportunity for you to just get a lot of stacks of morale, and, it might add up. It's not like he's doing a lot of healing, and the support memory fragments otherwise are just not doing a lot, but he will have a lot of attack cards in his deck if you are going for Devil Dice, that I would at least have to recommend it here. Now, for Pie-Bodied Popper, this is one that will be interesting, because I, by default, like using Full House. That is the one that allows you to draw a extra card as long as you are using a card from every combatant. And when we have, let's just use, for example, Cassius and Nia in a team, which is one of the recommended teams, right? You are going to have a lot of zero-cost cards. So you will have extra draw just by the nature of playing out your hand. And what I really like about Cassius as well is this is, again, doesn't exactly work with her because you are limiting your AP generation, but he also does have a really good Devil Dice Epiphany to abuse Eternal Hunger. So if you are just trying to build out maybe more of a generic use case for Cassius and making sure that you're getting all the extra draw, all the extra AP, then you could build a Devil Dice with this one Epiphany in particular. But for at least how her kit works and how we want to just be spamming attack cards, I would instead recommend the zero cost that is just going to be a free draw and helping burn through your deck. Now, again, for the more support role, I would recommend just the standard gear effects that I've already went over. If you do want to try to maximize his damage, you could actually go for the dice trick that gives you the extra attack, and then go for the zero cost spam with like 000. So there's some other side options that you could do, but at least for my day one build and recommendations, I am going to be all in focus for the draw support and making sure that Chizuru can do as much damage as possible. Now, the best partner for her, of course, is going to be none other than Ray, because we have insane damage boosting potential. And truly, this is like the whole reason why that she's ultimately going to be good. And again, maybe no surprise here is that I did give her the sub DPS memory fragments just because, well, she wants to be attacking with her card that generates morale. So free damage is free damage. And she also heals through her attacks. For Resonating Darkness, we are going to be going for the plus 60% damage amount because, well, all the cards are one cost that we might want to be using, so that's great. Strike of Darkness is going to give us an 80% boost to her basic attacks, which is going to be quite a good buff. So this is also one of the characters that is going to enable us to keep the basic attacks in the deck, kind of like how Mei Lin functions, in a way that we're now going to have extra save data to use on Chizuru in terms of we won't have a heavy removal cost. So we'll have to wait and see where that lands, and just in terms of maybe the other neutrals that we want to take. But at least I'm very happy that Strike of Darkness is going to give us the extra damage boost that we really want to get use out of her basics. Now, the one that I'm kind of on the fence about, and I'm really curious to see how this works, is her upgrade is not unique, which means technically we could use Oni Hunter and we could make this like a 350% times 3 attack, which would be really good, all things considered. And then if we have like a way to get vulnerability, it would be even more on top of that. But I like the idea of having an upgrade that we can use to all in focus on a particular attack. Now, this is one that I have not personally been able to try out yet for the upgrade cost and how I really want to focus on it. But when we have such a good multi-hit card base in a character's kit, then in theory, by combining, these two in particular, we are able just to put 110% buff on that card for just using one application of each. And then when you think about it as a card that's hitting 3, 4, or 5 times, we are actually talking up to like a 500% damage buff that Rei can provide, which is, again, as you might expect, one of the best damage buffs in the game that you can have access to. Now, the downside with this is that, of course, that means that you are giving up snack time, which is going to be your main draw or filtering. So you are going to have to reliably put this with a character like Cassius just to get the extra draw, or even Nia. So do keep that in mind, is that you are going all in damage focus and making sure that we're boosting our damage as much as possible, but without the snack time, which does feel a little bit bad sometimes when you generally want to rely on that for like your early setup. But if we have that draw elsewhere, it is totally fine. Now, the other thing that we're really excited about too is that with the rate up and all that stuff, we are likely going to end up with an E6, which means even more damage is going to be attached to this 4-star. So Rei just is an amazing free-to-play character that they gave us because everyone got one, but truly just continues to shine on. This is one of the best characters in the game for just boosting damage. Now the gear, again, all the generic stuff that I had kind of mentioned previously, but for neutrals, now this is again the one thing I want to add, is that gear bag, because it combos and can give you the extra draw for free, a lot of times you will have that one card left over at the very end. So I do like taking just the little bit of extra draw because for all the reasons I previously mentioned, she can be a little bit lacking in that category. So we'll have to wait and see where that ends up. But gear bag definitely getting a notable reference here just because it does combo. We can play this card for free when we're using our other upgrades. So Rei, if nothing else, make sure that Rei is on your team. You're following these epiphanies because this will be a massive, massive damage increase if you are trying to make Chizuru your main DPS. And last but not least, hear me out, my wild pick, because look, I refuse to use Luke. I know that Luke is definitely going to be the better option for how his bullets work and all of that stuff, but it's just not realistic that everyone is going to have Luke to get the bullet spam, to get the extra debuffs and all that stuff, right? So I did some digging and I was like, okay, what can we possibly do here? And now this is definitely going to be more of the like, this is the lowest on my list that I would recommend. But if you are a free-to-play player who is just looking for anything that can combo with her to fill a third slot, well, everyone got her for free. And technically, her opening found Epiphany that gives you the extra hits is exactly what she's going to want. But it's also really important to note here is that with unlimited firepower, this can also be used to buff Chizuru's main damage dealing attack card. So she actually becomes a reasonably okay sub DPS that still can boost your main damage dealer, which is really nice. But the last thing I want to mention is that with her neutral card, you are very welcome to see quick shelling, which is just going to be a zero cost cycle, which is just leading up to that debuff and making sure that you are getting even more attack. So this is where it becomes one of those more interesting things of like, yes, we have to use attack cards, so we can't use the better version of opening found. And look, I will admit, I know I just said I was going to skip Tressa because there's one build that is so much better than the other. And look, Beryl has the same thing. Her opening found when you have the upgrade is just a billion times better, but I wanted to put one extra build in here that free-to-play players might not be considering or might not be aware of because they're already using Tressa on a different team, and you just need something for that third slot for Chizuru. And well, Barrel can definitely get the job done with the extra attacks, and then making sure that you're having quick shelling as another way, much like Devil Dice, just to cycle through your deck, get the extra attack cards in, and the fact that it costs 0. The other downside that I'll note here is that 80 damage is not a lot, right? So you will want to make sure that you're upgrading your neutral damage node if you do care about the amount of damage that this is doing, right? But we are a bit limited in terms of like what really good neutral cards that we can rely on with this type of build when we factor in, the bigger picture of what's available to Rangers. Then, Charge Shot, I took the retain just to, again, get it out of our deck. Now, this one we never really want to play. This just kind of, this just vibes. We're never going to have the AP realistically to use this card, or in most cases. So we're just focused on the opening found to give us another card that is multi-hit and boosted by Ray. I want to stress that a lot, right? This will actually be a decent damage card when combined with Ray, because it is also a 1 cost that is going to get all the same buffs that we just talked about from Ray. So you'll be surprised if you have a upgraded Barrel, this will actually work out quite well and synergizes with the entire team being focused on the 1 cost build. Now, again, the critical damage and the plus 12 attack and all that stuff is going to be good, but if you just want a set that is easier to farm, you could also use Conquerors, which is what I'm going to be using because I cannot get Executioner pieces to save my life. So I just use Conquerors on everybody that has the 1 cost attack, and we'll see where things go from there. But this will be the last portion of this video, looking at the teams overall, the full breakdown of the character, and of course, in the future, I will have a more proper breakdown of showcasing, what I build, where did she work with the new boss, the new raid mode that we're getting, all that stuff, and just exploring the character over the next few days. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any future Chaos Zero Nightmare content, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as it does help us out a lot. But otherwise, until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.